Random live that I have decided on Tuesday. I haven't been doing live for some time, so I thought that I would do that today because inspired by the coaching that I just had with one of my amazing clients from the global south, as he puts it. And the topic that we were coaching today was discrimination and how to deal with discriminatory treatments, especially in his case. He was talking about living in Scandinavia, his experience, and this brought me to my experience that I have lived in Europe for some time now. And also, when the discriminatory treatment keeps piling up and piling up, whether this is at work, whether this is at home, excuse me, and how can we effectively deal with it in the way that it doesn't affect us so much that it just shuts us down and we want to just take leave or sick leave or just wanting to resign from this world and go back to the world that we know, this type of experience, right? So I wanted to share my experience and also my take on how I have decided to deal with such situations. And I would like to share that in case this is helpful for anyone, and also for you to reflect on this, right? So I have been, I think, discriminated in so many different ways. By now, I could like name lots of different situations, but I have specifically decided to name several experiences that I have recently had. Actually, one on the border in Germany, and then another one from my past humanitarian experience, so that you can relate to what type of discrimination that I'm talking about and how this type of setting makes someone feel, right? So this is the conversation basically. So recently I was traveling to Germany, as you may have heard that I was traveling to meet my niece and get her to settle in her studies. And then on the way crossing the border, me and my husband and other passengers in the bus, and we were stopped to do the the passport check, right? And usually this always happens to me that police officers come over and check my passport, and then there's always something to discuss. And I thought that once I have my residence permit in Italy, then this wouldn't happen anymore. Except that I have forgotten totally that 2021, I overstayed for 2 days in Germany, and at the border, as I was leaving from Berlin, at the border in the airport, they told me that you have overstayed. And interestingly, in that story, this German police officer told me that I need to write you a note to the prosecutor's office that you have overstayed, and then prosecutor's office decides what to do, right? And there was another police officer who I have come to later understand that he was of Turkish origin, and he was very kind to me. And he said, he asked the colleague, maybe it's okay that we don't do this. It's just not worth it. It's only 2 days. And the other police officer didn't agree. So anyway, so they have written the note to the prosecutor's office that I have overstayed 2 days. And then I have forgotten all about it. I have never received a letter from them. And considering how I've been moving around in the last couple of years, so probably the mail gotten lost somewhere. So back to the current situation in May, recently, sorry, in June, as I was traveling to Germany with my husband in the bus. So the police officer comes in and he stops, and then he asks me to leave the bus. And then as I left the bus, he told me that here is a detention warrant for you uh, to be detained unless you pay 685 euros in cash. And if you don't pay that, then we need to detain you for 30 days. And the situation was so shocking already as it is. And And the situation was so shocking that I mean I didn't have that much in cash with me. My husband had about 400 euros, and then the rest I needed to find, right? So I asked the police officer if, and by the way, he was speaking Russian to me, so that was interesting. But anyway, I asked him if it's okay that I would go and ask other passengers in the bus so that I can give the money, because obviously I was so shocked to my core about that treatment. And then how the other police officer was treating my husband like a criminal and me as well a criminal while we were trying to gather that money, while I was like panicking already how to get the cash in place for to get to the police officer. And the other police officer was treating my husband in the way that felt so discriminatory, right? And he was telling me his experience of how he was treated like the biggest criminal that you can find. And I was feeling so much worse in that situation. For obviously overstaying was my fault, and I should have taken care of that on time. But beside that, how the way that this money was gathered and how I have been able to give the money, but still that experience was so much where you could say, "Oh my God, I I forgot how it feels like to be a second second hand or inferior citizen type of feeling." And the same thing that my husband was experiencing and sharing with me. And this is how this feels. And this was, of course, very extreme example that I have gone through, right? But what is important here in this story is not only that this money, that the fine that I was supposed to pay could have been taken from me, because I would have paid that money anyway. This could have been taken from me in the most human way possible, to just say, I'm sorry that this is what happened to you, and we cannot get payment any other way. So if you could find the money, then we would just go get on and do other things, right? If it was done in this way from the police officers, then this experience would have been so much easier to handle, right? And also how they started treating my husband in a particular way as if he had committed a crime by accompanying me or by being with me. That was so discriminatory, right? So that's the recent experience that I still have a lot of feelings around it, but I wanted to process a lot of those emotions before sharing this. But I thought today, as I was discussing with my client about this discriminatory approaches and discriminatory treatments that we tend to get being in another country or maybe even in our own country, right? And knowing, like, I think as he was talking about his experience of so many different ways of being discriminated, and not only in terms of like visa, but also in terms of getting the work contract. And then after he's gotten the work contract, then they cancel the work contract because they said, well, we can't really give you any work permit. And this is like already piling up a lot of these examples. And then when you experience this at work, it makes things a lot worse as well, right? So I want to share his experience that he was saying, but also I want to share my experience of how this feels on my feeling level, so that we recognize how hurtful and how angry this makes us feel, right? So his experience was that his one of his staff member was saying that I just don't want to work with people from these countries, right? And and he said that this is not the first time this person is saying, this is the third time, in fact, saying. And every time he tries to solve the problem so that this person does not say this anymore, But then he also feels very angry for not having said anything about this behavior of the staff member because he's afraid of the retaliation that he experienced before when he reported such discriminatory behavior, right? And therefore he just feels like, okay, he told me that he feels so much withdrawn from everything because all of this discriminatory approach keeps like piling up, and then to the point that you just feel like so sick. And and the idea of even going to the work space again and seeing this person just makes him feel very overwhelmed and, excuse me, and anxious, and he just does not want to face that, right? And this is the same similar experience that I had in my work experience, where I would work in Kyrgyzstan with other humanitarians from other countries, and me being local and them being international, right? And a lot of the times, I would hear them criticize and talk about how Kyrgyz people are this, or in Kyrgyzstan things don't work, the Kyrgyzstan this and that, and all of these criticism. And now I could understand on some of the intellectual level how some of the things they were saying were actually true, that certain things didn't work, right? But the way that it was phrased, right? The way that they were saying this, the way that it was coming out to me sounded like very discriminatory by saying that you Kyrgyz people are not able to do these things because inherently something's wrong with you, kind of way of saying things. And then imagine like hearing those conversations from our other internationals, right? About, like, on the one hand, you have a lot of the respect and a lot of the admiration for their work and for who they are and how amazing the professionals they are. And then when they get together and then they bash about the country that they're working in, and in front of you as well, and maybe sometimes they're not in front of you, but still you hear these stories from them, and then you already, in my case, right, in my case, I already had my own inferiority issues from before, where I used to feel like I'm less than the people who spoke Russian, right? I'm less intelligent, less smart, less this, less that than the people who spoke Russian, or than the people who spoke English, or than the people who've been educated here, than the people who have been educated there, and then wishing things were different. And then you hear these people in on top say this, just makes you feel hurt on a very deep, deep level. And then in those moments, I would never say anything to those people. I would never even mention that I don't like this, or I don't think this is right. I think this is discriminatory. I would never say this because I would be so deeply fearful of how, if I say this, this will all make things wrong. They will get so mad at me. They will start retaliating. They will cut my contract. They will fire me from my work, even though I like my work, right? These are the like one side of the story of how I would be fearful that I would never say that. But the other side of the story, that because of which I wouldn't say that, is because I would just feel like, what if that's true, right? What if whatever the discrimination or discriminatory things that they were saying about me or my people, on some level feeling like, oh my God, what if that is true? What if I'm less, really? What if they are more and I'm less? And that hurts so much. And as I'm speaking now about these experiences, this hurts so much, right? And then, and as I was speaking to my client today about this work, and I mean, I'm so grateful that he was very vulnerable, open, and honest in talking about this, and that helps so much of his healing, and also I have, through that work, I have um, healed my own experience from a lot of the times. But here is what I would like to get to now to talk about in terms of how to deal with it. And I think that's the part that's key here, because this might be also one of the reasons many of my humanitarians are wanting to leave and to transition to something else, and or they are not really enjoying being where they are, or they keep feeling like they need to keep fighting against this so much that their experience is not enjoyable, right? And therefore, I really wanted to share my perspective of how I have dealt with it, and how I want to offer for you in case this is helpful to deal with it as well. So, the current way of many of us have dealt with, just to summarize from my experience and from my clients' experience, the current way that many of us have dealt with is either we have tried to follow an organization's structure of reporting about it and talking to the HR or talking to the supervisor, and we feel like that didn't really effectively solve the problem. Right? That's experience of many humanitarians that I talk to, me including. I have done this in my own work, in my humanitarian work. I have reported this, and this didn't lead to anything. So that's one way that we have tried to deal with it, and we just feel even more disappointed. Another way that we have dealt with it or tried to deal with it is saying nothing. And that had been my experience, as I said, is I never used to say anything. I used to swallow everything, suppress all of the feelings that I experienced of feeling hurt, feeling offended, feeling angry, feeling sad. I have swallowed all of those and never said anything to the people around me who were saying this repeatedly, and I never said anything about this, right? And then feeling angry for myself being so weak that I never said anything, and not doing anything about it, right? So that's the another way that we have tried to deal with it, and clearly that's not working. Just like my client was saying that he just keeps feeling anger so much that he didn't say anything to that person. He also didn't do anything, and then he feels like withdrawing from social gathering. He feels withdrawing from the office, and he just it does not even want to go back. So these are the ways that we have dealt with it. Either we try to go and talk to follow the hierarchy rules, or we try to withdraw from everything and not do anything and keep swallowing and suppressing. And we know that those methods, excuse me, did not work. Now, here is the other one that I'm wanting you to suggest, and here is what I have practiced and done it myself. One of the first thing that I have done the work of, is stop feeling inferior. Stop feeling less than other humans, and instead feeling equal to other humans. Because as humanitarians, we know and we preach about how we are equal human beings, right? Irrespective of what the titles we hold, the resources we have, not resources, whatever it is, we tend to always advocate for equality, right? Equality in our rights, equality in our being human and having our dignity. And that is something that we don't tend to really internalize, I think, when it comes to our own um, way of seeing ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. And therefore, for many of us who have been socialized or programmed, or maybe grew up in countries which were occupied by other countries, especially in those contexts, maybe that we have, many of us may have this feeling of not being enough, or not being equal, not being as to say at the same level as others, even though, like my client was saying today, that he doesn't think of other people like that, right? He always thinks of other people as all equals, but except when it comes to him, he doesn't see it that way. And that's really the work that I have done on myself, of no longer allowing myself to treat myself in the discriminatory way of feeling less than others. And that's, I think, the work that I would suggest for everyone to do, especially if you are struggling with that less than. Because what ends up happening is that when we are already feeling less than, and then other people have their own opinions of discriminatory approaches, then we feel hurt even more because we already have this wound, right? And then other people come and step on that wound, then it just makes it so much harder, so much hurtful, so much offended. Then we feel like we're incapable of acting or reacting to this in the healthy way. We instead end up either reacting in a way that's very harsh or very like tit for tat, kind of like mirroring their behavior, which is not what we want to do, right? Many of us. So therefore, when we are in wounded situation, then we are reacting a bit not the way that we really want to, not the mature or healthy or loving way. And therefore, we just either attack that person or feel defensive or keep wanting to supplement or compensate, like my client was saying. Keep trying to find a way to show and prove how he's actually a great manager or how he is this, or people from the global south are like this. And if we are keeping being in that energy of just trying to convince others, trying to prove to others, trying to supplement, compensate to others, then we're so exhausted. So therefore, the biggest work that I have done that I feel very proud of, and I would like to suggest to do that to you as well, is healing that wound and never treating yourself as less than anymore. And therefore, once you heal and once you feel like you are whole and you have that experience and you have learned now your lesson of how not to let other people to treat you, now then, once we feel equal, and by the way, that doesn't need to take a long time. I used to believe that it takes a long time to heal from a wound, but it turns out it's not, especially if I don't indulge in the wound so much of, oh, I'm this, but rather I'm no longer, it's a decision that I have made at some point. I'm no longer treating myself as inferior. End of, end of story. If I don't want anyone to treat me like this, then I shouldn't be the one who's also treating me like this, right? So therefore, no more feeling inferior, no more feeling less than, and that's a decision that I needed to make. And I would like to offer to you that this is something that you can do as well. So once I have made that decision and I have decided that I will no longer feel less than, and I have started acting in the world, how do I really react to things when I'm not feeling less than? How do I really react to things when I'm not wounded? Because the next thing that I wanted to do for myself is I did not want to react to things from my wounds anymore. I did not want to react to things from my fear anymore. I didn't want to do things or try to solve it because I'm afraid otherwise it will lead to something else. Or I didn't want to say things um, I didn't want to react to things out of retaliation or fear of retaliation, right? I didn't want to react to things out of, oh my God, what if this person now starts bashing me around, and then it gets out of hand and all of these things. I didn't want to do any of those things. And also the third element, I didn't want to react to things to punish the other person. Because this is the other thing that anger does, is anger or resentment, right? We just want to get back at them. And I can so feel that feeling. At the border in Germany, when I was um, threatened to go to detention or pay this amount for me overstaying 2 days, I was feeling like, man, they are so powerful, and I feel like powerless. And then in that moment, I reminded myself, no, I don't want to feel powerless just because the hierarchical structure is dictating that I should be powerless. I want to keep feeling powerful no matter what. Even if I have fear, I still want to feel powerful, right? So therefore, you can see that in that moment, it's also very easy for us to do things out of wanting to punish the other person, out of shutting up the other person, out of just getting rid of that person, or saying something rude to that other person because they're being discriminatory. And I can feel that it's not easy to act or react any other way. But here is what I have realized is that the the way to solve problems by punishing others is not going to solve problems, and we know this. We have studies done on this, and therefore, and I used to work in detention in Georgia as part of UN protecting rights of asylum seekers and refugees. And I used to read a lot about detention and corrective behavior and punishment and all of these things. And I have learned a lot of studies to show that corrective behavior for, I can't generalize obviously, for this discriminatory type of things may not work. So therefore, I have decided for myself that the way that I want to the way I want to react to such situation is from feeling whole, feeling equal, feeling powerful, in the way that I decide how to contribute to the solution, in the way that I become the person who has the force to bring the best in the other person, rather than shutting down the other person or punishing the other person or retaliating the other person or fighting with that person or feeling defensive with that person. Instead of doing all of those things, I want to feel accepting of myself, feeling um, love, feeling equal, feeling powerful about how I can be that force that brings the best in the other person, and try to find out how I can help or discuss this to solve the situation. And it may not be solved with one conversation, and I recognize that. But at least in that moment, when I hear this type of comments or this type of treatment, in that moment, I can go to my feeling of equal, feeling of love, that I want to solve things with love and not hatred, and feeling powerful or brave that I can do something about this, and tell that person, the way that you said it came across to me as discriminatory, and I'm assuming that's not what you mean. And I just wanted to open up space in case you wanted to talk about this. This is how I want to react to this, and this is how I have also reacted to things. And in that moment, when I say this directly to that person without having the fear behind, without having the anxiety behind, or without having the anger behind, without having the passive aggressiveness behind, but rather feeling genuinely wanting to do something about it, and believing that the other person wants to do something about it as well, except that that person may not be aware of what that person is saying, and then opening up the conversation, I feel leads to better solutions than any other solutions that we may have tried. And I know it's incredibly difficult. And this is also speaking from experience. It's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly counterintuitive. It's incredibly can I even do that? Right? But I have concluded for myself that one of the best ways to heal my wound is not keep acting from that wound anymore. I do not want to keep acting and keep trying to solve things from my wound. I also don't want to do that from my fears. I also don't want to do that from feeling inferior or feeling less than. I no longer want to react or interact with the world from those feelings. And therefore, the opposite of those feelings is love. Opposite of those feelings is trust. The opposite of those feelings is wholeness. And I have, even though it may not feel comfortable in that moment, to try to go back to that feeling of, okay, what if I can be the force in this situation to bring the best in myself and bring the best in the other person? Then how would I interact with this person? How would I talk to this person? And how would I let them know that what they're saying comes across, or the way I perceive it, is discriminatory? And before me getting offended about it, what if I check with them and also discuss with them and say that I don't want to um, keep on and keep thinking about this after work. I just want to solve this in the moment, in that place, with the loving intention of solving it, with the loving intention of bringing maybe awareness to the other person. And that way that person feels hopefully good having the space to talk about and apologizing possibly for the mistake or the treatment that they had, and also taking that seriously, then going forward and working on it. Hopefully that's the best scenario, and I would like to strive for that best scenario. I'm assuming it may not work all of the time, and I'm assuming there might be times where it will blow like worst ways. But at least I want to go home feeling good about having done my best to act from love, from good intentions of wanting to solve this with the other person, trusting the other person that they want to solve this too, and then figuring out this together. That's what I would like to go home feeling, rather than go home feeling like how they could do this to me, how this keeps happening, and how this and how that, and keep filing and compiling all of these emotions that I don't like feeling to begin with. And this way, I'm hoping to contribute to improving the system instead of just keep perceiving the system as discriminatory, because the system is made of people, right? The system is made of people and individuals who are behaving in a particular way. Yes, we can argue a lot about how systems are enabling these behaviors, and I'm assuming or trusting that other people are working on this. But in the meantime, though, my interaction with that person is still not going to be solved by the system, I'm assuming, because I have tried that route already. So therefore, the what is the most effective route that I can contribute to solving as a person who is on the receiving of end of it, and how can I do that? That's where I would like to spend my energy and time, and in the way that A, it's healing for me, B, it's not me keep acting from my wounds, from my fears, and keep growing them, but rather keep acting from love, from feeling equal, from feeling brave, from feeling trusting that I can solve it or contribute to solving it. I trust the other person wants the same, and how can we do this together? And this is what I would like to suggest to you. If this resonates with you, absolutely let me know about your questions, or if you want coaching on this, I would love to support you in this journey. Thank you so much for being with me, for listening to my stories, stories of my clients, of how this affects, and also how we can powerfully solve this in the way that feels good to us as humans. And I would love for you to try that as well. Have a beautiful week, everyone. See you soon.